Have you ever actually stopped to think about how people show off what they have? I mean, we see it literally everywhere, right? It's completely baked into our culture. But here's the fascinating thing we're going to explore today. The way people display their wealth, or how they intentionally go out of their way to hide it, changes drastically depending on exactly how much money they actually make. Today, we're unpacking the hidden architecture of how we broadcast our status to the world, and we'll see why the loudest voice in the room usually has the least to say.
You know, there's this hidden truth that nobody really tells you about climbing the income ladder, and it's summed up perfectly right here. The flex doesn't die when you get rich, it goes silent. We always tend to think that as people make more money, their displays of wealth just get louder, bigger, and shinier, right? We instantly imagine massive yachts and giant gold chains. But the reality is entirely different. The true evolution of wealth signaling is a deeply psychological journey. It's a journey that takes you from broadcasting your worth to absolutely everyone on the street, to eventually broadcasting it to almost nobody at all.
So here is how we are going to climb this wealth ladder step by step, to see how your behavior and your audience shifts. We'll start with the $29,000 loud flex, move on up to the $120,000 social climb, jump to the $2.3 million counter signal, check out the $5 million stealth wealth, and finally look at the psychology of disappearing.
All right, section 1, the $29,000 loud flex, aspiration and visibility. Let's start right where most people start.
Put yourself directly in the shoes of someone earning $29,000 a year. This is the absolute foundation of the signaling ladder. At this level, life is, frankly, heavy. You might be working a job with a name tag, dealing with a schedule that changes every single week without your input. The psychological weight here is intense, because your money leaves pretty much as fast as it lands. Rent probably eats up a third of it, maybe even more, before you've even had a chance to spend a single dime. But because so much of your life feels completely out of your control, you fiercely guard the few things other people can actually see. It's the brand new phone in your pocket with the flawless screen, the one that added $34 a month to a bill you'll be paying off for the next 2 years. Or it's the shoes you meticulously wipe down with a damp cloth before you ever step foot outside.
Just think about the math behind this mindset for a second. You might literally eat instant noodles for days on end just to stand an inch taller in a pair of leather sneakers that cost more than your actual monthly car payment. Now, people love to call this behavior stupid. They sit back and judge, saying the broke kid with the expensive shoes is just terrible with money. But if we actually dig into the psychology of it, it isn't stupid at all. Think about what a stranger on the street can actually see when they look at you. They can't see your savings account, they can't see your credit score, and they certainly cannot see your ambition. As far as the world knows, your net worth is just an invisible number locked away in some app on your phone.
There's an economist named Thorstein Veblen who talked about this specific concept way back in 1899. He called it conspicuous consumption, basically spending whose entire job is just to be seen happening. Now, Veblen initially thought this was a disease of the wealthy, but he actually had it completely upside down. Because your net worth is invisible, you're forced to announce yourself loudly. When you want to signal to the whole world that you refuse to stay at the bottom, you have exactly one channel that works: the visible thing, the big logo, the unmistakable silhouette of a luxury brand. Your audience here is the general public. It's the people on the subway, strangers at the mall, people passing you on the sidewalk. And because they can't see anything else about your life, the signal absolutely has to be loud.
Okay, moving to section 2, the $120,000 social climb, changing the frequency. Let's see how this psychology shifts when you multiply that starting salary by 4.
You've made it to $120,000. You have a real title now. You have an office, a dedicated parking spot, and suddenly, those big, flashy logos start shrinking the second someone with real corporate money walks into the room. In fact, you'd honestly be a little embarrassed to be seen in those giant logo sneakers from the previous tier. Your tastes have completely changed because you've finally given the flex a real, substantial budget.
So instead of sneakers, now there's a leased German sedan for $640 a month sitting in your driveway. You've intentionally moved to a high-rent zip code where the neighborhood coffee shops have those trendy, minimalist, one-word names. You start taking international trips, and let's be totally real here. It's not just for the culture. The location tag is the entire point of the photo you're posting online. You join a $200 a month networking gym instead of the basic $40 one, just in case you happen to shake the right hand while you're on the treadmill. You think you've grown more sophisticated, but the core engine hasn't changed one bit. You've just swapped your audience from kids who read sneakers to professionals who read postal codes and steering wheel badges. It is the exact same transmission, just broadcast on a brand new frequency. And honestly, it's incredibly lonely. Nobody in this bracket will ever admit they're doing it. Your coworker casually calls their expensive watch an investment. Your neighbor swears the premium apartment is just for a shorter commute. The bill for this tier is absolutely brutal because you're scaling your spending to match the expensive new room you've just walked into.
Which brings us to Section 3, the $2.3 million countersignal, inverting the pattern. Now we skip ahead to a massive milestone, where the numbers get significantly larger, but ironically, the cars get much, much worse.
You might assume that people above the $120,000 mark are flexing even harder, but at $2.3 million in net worth, that is where the whole system just flips on its head. The flex doesn't just stop growing, something clicks deep in the psyche, and it starts to vanish completely.
Instead of that pristine, leased German sedan, you're suddenly driving a 12-year-old Volvo with a scuffed bumper that you never ever bother to fix. The watch on your wrist, it's made of plastic, and you change the battery yourself at the kitchen island with a butter knife. Your house is very nice, sure, but it's deliberately hidden behind old-growth trees on a street nobody even knows the name of. See, you're now spending enormously on things nobody can see, like broad market index funds, paid in full college tuition, and holding 8 solid months of cash reserves. You stop spending on things people can see because you finally realize that a car screaming money is usually driven by a person who desperately needs you to hear it. The loud flex suddenly just looks like a confession that the money is brand new, and you're still just a little stunned to have it.
Actually, a couple of economists wrote a brilliant paper on this exact dynamic back in 2002. They titled it "Too Cool for School," and they called this phenomenon countersignaling. The core idea is brilliantly simple. The genuinely skilled or the genuinely wealthy simply don't need to prove it. Think about it. If your status is precarious, like in the middle class, you feel this constant burning need to prove your position with everything you own. But if your status is cemented, you just don't. So the elite entirely refuse to signal. You are no longer transmitting to the whole world. Instead, you're transmitting to the 4 or 5 other top players who can actually decode this refusal to signal. That 12-year-old Volvo isn't just a practical financial decision, it's a highly exclusive sentence spoken in a language most people will simply never learn.
All right, Section 4. $5 million and stealth wealth, the final inversion. Let's take one more jump to the absolute top of our ladder.
At $5 million and beyond, the silence gets so profound, so complete, it stops feeling like a calculated strategy and just starts feeling like a person at total peace. The signal inverts all the way. It's fascinating to witness, because you do something here that would have been entirely unthinkable to your $29,000 self. The innate human need to prove yourself to the outside world, it completely evaporates.
Now, you're wearing plain white t-shirts that came in a basic $12 3-pack. Your phone is 2 or 3 models old, the screen is cracked right across the middle, and you genuinely cannot make yourself care enough to go get it fixed. You buy your own groceries at a regular store, pushing a squeaky grocery cart down the aisle. You deliberately make your visible self strategically empty. Why? Because what you are buying now is distance. You're buying unbothered privacy. You are buying the ultimate freedom to cross a crowded parking lot and have absolutely no stranger form a single thought about your worth. The people in your actual life, your tight inner circle, they already know what you have, because they have it too. The silence is total, and that is the entire point. This psychological shift is exactly what researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko found when they spent years interviewing actual verified millionaires. Their findings completely embarrassed everybody who thought they understood wealth, because they discovered the real money was never actually sitting in those loud, exotic cars. The flashy people were usually heavily leveraged, essentially just renting a lifestyle they hadn't actually reached yet. The reality perfectly aligns with their famous millionaire next door research. The real wealth is the modest person who mows their own lawn on a Saturday morning, the person who drives a reliable used car, the person you walk right past on the sidewalk without a single flicker of recognition.
Let's wrap this up with Section 5, the psychology of disappearing, shrinking the audience. Let's pull all of this together to understand the core engine running underneath the floorboards of this entire journey.
When we map this out across our 4 income levels, the core engine becomes glaringly obvious. It is the exact same instinct driving every single tier from the bottom to the top. It's the deeply human need to send a signal to the exact people whose opinion you've decided actually counts. Loud means aspiration at the bottom, but at the absolute top, loud means insecurity, and quiet means you have truly, finally arrived. Don't let anyone sell you the soft story that the plain t-shirt and the old Volvo are just about being a humble person. It is not humility. It is the most exclusive signal that exists, broadcasting on a frequency the bottom physically cannot even pick up.
Because in the end, it was never actually about the shoes. It was never about the leased sedan or the prestigious zip code or that networking gym. You spent your whole life learning how to be seen, climbing rung after rung, only to realize the final, most profound lesson was learning how to disappear on purpose. When explaining yourself means you need someone else to know your worth, you eventually realize that needing them to know is the very thing your wealth finally bought you out of. So I'll leave you with this to think about. When you finally have enough, who will you quietly cut out of the conversation?